we know the stories, many of the stories about police officers who attack unarmed citizens, who shoot unarmed citizens, primarily black and brown citizens. But dogs are utilized on a frequent basis to attack unarmed citizens as well. Let me bring your attention to something that happened in 2020. Police were investigating a report of burglary at a closed Burger King where they encountered a 14-year-old boy. All right, let's go to some of that footage.
He's coming this way. Drop the scissors. Drop the scissors. Hold on, Uygur. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on, Uygur. Uygur, hold on. Find that guy. Hit him. Hit, 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 hit. Hop, 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 hit. Hey. Hop. Uygur, hop. No. Hop. Get on the ground. Uygur, here, hit, 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 boy. I was 14 years old. Please. Stop fighting the dog. Stop fighting. Stop fighting the dog. Please, please.
This is a 14-year-old kid. And while the cop is saying stop fighting the dog, what? Stop fighting the dog that's attacking this 14-year-old. According to the parents, they later counted 37 puncture wounds running from his calves to his groin. The teen doesn't recall how he ended up there, as he had been at a party before, according to the narrative from the teen. Listen, I don't know if the teen's telling the truth, and that's not really my beef here. There's another story where a Salt Lake cop was actually charged with a felony for utilizing a police dog. Let's have some of that video.
Get on the ground. Get on the ground or you're gonna get bit. Get on the ground. Get down.
Get on the ground.
On the ground.
All the way down. On the
Hit.
ground.
Hit.
I'm on the ground. I'm on the ground. Why are you biting me?
Good boy.
I'm on the
Good boy.
ground. Stop.
Hit. Good
Why are
boy.
you guys out?
Good boy. Good boy.
Back right now.
Holy
Right now.
ow!
Good boy.
What the?
Hit. Hit.
What
Good boy.
Ow!
Good boy. Good boy.
Ow! Why are you guys doing this? Ow!
Good boy.
I'm a-
Good
Ow!
boy.
Why are you
Good
biting?
boy. Good boy.
Why?
Good boy.
Ow! What did I
Good.
do? Ow! I mean, ow! What the?
Good boy. Good boy.
Ow! What the did I do? Oh my God!
Good
Ow!
boy.
All right, Officer Nicholas Pearce, former Officer Nicholas Pearce, was charged with a felony for telling this canine to bite, to attack a citizen who was actually compliant, on his knees, hands up. The district attorney looked at this case and said this is actually a criminal act. Adrienne, I think we need to see more of this, more of DAs getting involved in police misconduct and police criminality, because you don't need a new law. You just needed to enforce the ones on the books in order to get justice in this case.
Absolutely, that is a use of excessive force when you're using the dog unnecessarily. Because this notion of using these canines, whether it's drug sniffing dogs or you're using them to subdue or to hunt down someone who's a suspect, that's not the issue. The issue is using them in an excessive and overly aggressive way. Interspecies violence has been used as a tool largely against black and brown people for centuries. And the thing is, research shows that police, when they use canine dogs and they bite people, they predominantly bite black and brown people. One study in LA County showed that black people, who only represent about 9 to 10% of LA County, were 60% of dog bites by police. These dogs are being sicked on people, and they happen to be black and brown people. This is a use of excessive force and interspecies violence.
I like the way you put that. Let me bring up some of the stats. Salt Lake Tribune and Fox 13 analyzed 39 body camera videos from 3 largest police departments in the county: Salt Lake City, which we just saw, Unified, and West Valley City. In 20% of those videos, suspects had their hands up and were face down when they were bit. A majority of those involved were Salt Lake City police. These videos, next graphic, these videos from the past 2 years are part of a countywide investigation launched by Salt Lake County District Attorney Sim Gill into how police use canines. So far, Gill has charged Salt Lake City officer Nicholas Pearce with 2 felonies involving 2 separate cases. The prosecutor's review was prompted by a Tribune story that included body camera footage of Pearce ordering his dog to bite a black man who had his hands up. Let's be very clear about the old thing that's kind of new. It is new that you have arrests happening because cops are using canines. It is an old thing that canines are being used to brutalize black people who are unarmed. And let me just remind you of some of how this used to go down. You see, many people would try to argue that the reason canines are used is because individuals are in fact criminals and this is part of their criminal pursuit. Well, the data clearly shows that 20% of the unarmed individuals who are attacked by these police dogs are actually in compliance with the officer's demand. That is based on 39 separate cases being reviewed by actual independent reviewers. Above that is this fact. When you utilize these animals, typically it creates a barrier between the cop and responsibility. And they have learned this. And that is why they feel comfortable doing this to unarmed individuals. Adrienne, you've seen this. You know it happens. I know some cats in my old hood that it happened to. And they were telling the truth. They came back out of jail. They said, man, they put the dog on me and I was completely abiding by what the cops said. It happens more than 20%, just to keep it 100. Those are the cases that we have body camera footage for. What say you?
You know what, it just seeing that video footage, it goes back very far. Even Christopher Columbus, he would have 2 mastiffs with him and he would sick them on indigenous people. And seeing it happen to black people from slavery in the 60s and even now, it just shows you it's another weapon. It may not be a discharge of a gun, but it is a way in order to maintain brutality and to really control people and to punish them and to keep them fearful even if they are complying. And seeing this officer be charged with aggravated assault, it's a felony, maximum penalty, 15 years in prison. Sure, that's great, but will the officer be convicted? And also, what will the true punishment be? Because this man that we're talking about, Mr. Ryan, he has now lost use of his left leg after surgery, after that dog mangled it for 50 seconds. This is violence. This is state sanctioned violence, and there needs to be severe penalties.
Yeah, let's look at, and great point, let's look at the reality of what people believe in this country. 94% of Americans believe that police reform is a must. 58% of Americans believe it is something that must be dramatic. Hell, even 51% of Republicans are for some level of police reform. But then when you go to the leadership class of the Republican Party, the leadership class of the conservative movement, they are anti-police reform. They simply want to give lip service to the idea without creating actual policies in order to do so. So they are adversarial to police reform, adversarial to reimagining the police. Here's the reality. If your county, if your city, if your state has decided to hire more police officers to combat crime, then your government has simply failed you, because they have admitted they have no idea how to actually attack the criminality that's happening in their jurisdiction. So in order to give you a band-aid and to appease you as a voter, they will then hold a press conference telling you how many more cops they've hired. Well, they have hired more cops because they are unable to actually solve the underlying issues that lead to criminality under their authority, such as homelessness, addiction, mental health disorders. There's a cause and effect relationship to all crime in the United States of America. And if your government is not in the business of actually solving or creating remedy for that underlying issue, it will simply continue to throw money at an already over-bloviated police budget, and they will tell you that is the great fix. What are your thoughts, Adrienne, about police reform in this country?
That it needs to be now and it needs to be significant. We're putting our resources into something that doesn't stop crime, but something that is really largely used being as an oppressor on society. And what we need to do is invest our money on the front end to prevent a lot of things that actually feed crime, as you've noted. And we need these things now because all we're doing really is feeding into this system of, again, this us them narrative and pretending that Americans are under attack, which is why we always need these guns and this mentality that someone's out to get us and whatnot. And we need to stop this and start living smart and holding people accountable for essentially capitalizing off of us or using their power and abusing it in the way we saw that officer do with his canine dog.
Yeah, very well said, very well said. And I hope that highlighting stories like this will actually cause a level of consciousness, not only in the community at large, but also inside of the law enforcement community, to let them know that we are watching this action also, even though these activities by utilizing canines has been significantly underreported. It is time for us to put this front and center of what we talk about as it relates to police reform.